Somewhere in an archive lies a photograph no one has looked at for 100 years. Today, we look together. This is Behind the Photo. Subscribe, leave a like, and tell me your name in the comments. Let this place remember you too. Enjoy the watch.
On the night of September 3rd, 1888, the Vauclan Plantation in St. Mary Parish, Louisiana burned to the ground. Every field worker escaped. Every household servant escaped. Every person on the property, dozens of people, moved toward the door before the flames reached them. They had been warned, or had sensed it, or had simply known, in the way that people sometimes know things before they can explain knowing them. The owner did not move. Witnesses who fled past the main house saw Gerard Voclan through the parlor window. He was seated in his chair. He was watching the fire advance toward him. He was not restrained. He was not unconscious. He was watching the fire come with the particular composure of a man who has been expecting something for a very long time and is relieved, finally, that it has arrived. The fire marshal's report listed the cause as undetermined. The investigation lasted 2 days and was closed. 3 field workers, who had lived on the property for more than a decade, gave statements. Those statements were attached to the report. Then they were removed before the report was filed. I found them in the St. Mary Parish Courthouse archive in a folder marked Vauclan, Fire 1888, inside a box that had not been opened since 1923. Tonight, we read what those 3 workers said about Gerard Vauclain, the Vauclan Plantation, and the 11 years that preceded the fire. Tonight, we find out what he was waiting for. Gerard Voclan sat in his chair and watched the fire come and did not move. Every other person on the Vauclan Plantation in St. Mary Parish, Louisiana, on the night of September 3rd, 1888, escaped. 41 people, field workers, household servants, a cook, a groundskeeper, the children of workers who lived in the quarters behind the main house. All of them reached safety before the fire consumed the buildings. Several of them reported in the immediate aftermath that they had not been woken by the fire. They had woken before the fire, had opened their eyes in the dark, and known, without any visible or audible signal, that they needed to leave. Gerard Voclan did not leave. He was seen by at least 4 people as they fled past the main house, seen through the parlor window, in the high-backed chair he kept beside the fireplace, watching the flames advance through the house with an expression that none of the witnesses described as fear. They described it as recognition, as arrival, as the face of a man who has been sitting in that chair for 11 years, waiting for something, and the something has finally come. He was 47 years old. He had owned the Vauclan Plantation since 1877, when he inherited it from his father. He left no will. He left no letter. He left no explanation of any kind, other than the fact of his stillness in the chair as the fire came, and the 3 worker statements that were attached to the fire marshal's report, and then removed before the report was filed. I found those statements in the St. Mary Parish Courthouse archive, in the Fire Investigations Record Group, covering the years 1880 to 1899. The folder bears the name Voclan and the date of the fire. Inside it, alongside the marshal's 2-page report, was a separate envelope, sealed, and marked to indicate that the statements within had not been included in the final report. The seal had not been broken since 1888. I broke it. This detail stopped me before I even read the statements. The envelope had not been opened since 1888. 135 years. Whatever was in those statements was placed in an envelope. The envelope was placed in a folder. The folder was placed in a box, and the box was placed on a shelf in the St. Mary Parish courthouse, and it sat there for 135 years, while the plantation site was sold and resold and eventually subdivided, while the sugarcane fields were converted to other uses, while the generations that had known the Voclan name died and were replaced by generations that had never heard it. 135 years of waiting. Tonight, we read them. The Voclan Plantation was a sugarcane operation in the Atchafalaya Basin region of St. Mary Parish, approximately 12 miles from the town of Franklin. The 1880 federal census, which is real and which is available through the Louisiana State Archives in Baton Rouge, lists the property as containing approximately 800 acres of improved land, with a primary crop of sugarcane and a secondary crop of cotton. The census records the household of Gerard Vauclain as consisting of Vauclan himself, described as a planter, age 39, born Louisiana, and 41 other persons listed as laborers, with the notation that most of the laborers had been resident on the property since before the war. The labor force of the Voclan Plantation was, in 1880, composed primarily of families who had been enslaved on the property before emancipation and who had remained as wage laborers in the years following. This was not unusual for Louisiana sugarcane operations in the 1870s and 1880s. The economics of the crop, combined with the social geography of the Atchafalaya Basin, meant that many of the same families who had worked the cane before the war continued to work it afterward, in conditions that were formally different and practically similar. What is unusual about the Voclan Plantation? In the period between 1877, when Gerard Voclan inherited the property, and 1888, when it burned, is documented in the 3 worker statements and in a handful of other sources that I located in the course of researching this case. The sugarcane harvest of 1877, the first under Gerard's management, was normal. The harvest of 1878 was normal. The harvests of 1879 and 1880 were normal. By every agricultural measure available, the plantation continued to function as it had under his father's management. The cane was cut, the sugar was produced, the wages were paid, the accounts were kept. But the accounts show something that the agricultural records do not. Beginning in 1879, Gerard Voclan began spending money on the northwest corner of the property. Not large amounts, small ones, consistent and regular, appearing in the accounts as materials without further specification. Timber, iron, rope, things that could be used to build something, or to mark something, or to seal something. Year after year, a modest but consistent expenditure on materials that went to the northwest corner and were never accounted for in any inventory of the plantation's infrastructure. I found the account books in the same courthouse archive as the worker statements. They are stored in a different box in the same record group. The accountant who kept them, a man whose name appears only as initials, was meticulous. Every expenditure is recorded and categorized. The northwest corner materials are the only items across 11 years of accounts that lack a specific description. Everything else is detailed. These are not. Gerard Voclan was not, by the accounts of those who knew him, a man who had inherited the plantation enthusiastically. Several letters from the period survive in the collection of the Louisiana Historical Association in New Orleans. I read them in the reading room on a Tuesday in October, and the archivist confirmed that they had been accessed only twice before in the preceding 20 years. And they describe a man who found the plantation a burden and who found the work of running it distasteful, in ways he never specified precisely but always returned to. He wrote to a cousin in New Orleans in 1878 1 year after inheriting, the land produces what it produces, and the arrangements proceed as they have always proceeded, and I find myself unable to feel about any of it the way my father felt about it. He loved this place. I do not love it. I am not sure I am capable of loving a piece of ground. But I am here, and the land is here, and the people are here, and so we continue. He wrote to the same cousin in 1881, "There is something wrong with this land. I have felt it since I arrived, and I have not been able to name it, and I am beginning to think that naming it is not the point. The point is what it requires. And what it requires, I am only now beginning to understand." He wrote in 1883, "I know now what is required. I have known for some time. I am not yet ready, but I am becoming ready." After 1883, the correspondence stops. Not because the cousin stopped writing. Her subsequent letters, which are also in the collection, continue to arrive and go unanswered. Gerard Vauclain simply stopped responding to letters, stopped corresponding with anyone in New Orleans or elsewhere, and appears to have remained on the plantation without leaving for the final 5 years of his life. The 3 workers who gave statements to the fire marshal in 1888 had all been on the plantation for more than a decade. Their names, as recorded by the clerk, are Celestine Arsenault, age 52, her son Joseph Arsenault, age 31, and a man named Solomon Thoreau, age 45, who had been the plantation's groundskeeper since 1871. Their statements describe the same events from 3 different vantage points in 3 different voices. Celestine Arsenault had been on the Voclan plantation since before the war. She was a child when she arrived, and she was 52 when it burned. And she told the marshal's clerk that she had known every Voclan who had worked that land, including Gerard's father, and that Gerard was different from all of them. She said, the others wanted what the land could give. Gerard wanted what the land could take. The clerk recorded this and underlined it, then drew a line through the underlining, as though reconsidering the emphasis. She said, when Gerard came here, after his father died, he walked the whole property by himself on the first day, not with an overseer, not with any of the men who knew the land, alone, for the whole day, and he came back at dusk changed, not changed in his face, changed in the way he stood, something decided, something settled, like he had asked the land a question and the land had answered. She said, after that, he started going to the old part of the property, the part his father never used. There is a section in the northwest corner of the 800 acres, past the old sugar house, that nobody worked because nothing grew there. The soil is wrong. The cane wouldn't take. The cotton wouldn't take. Nothing would grow in that corner, except the old cypress trees and the water plants along the edge of the bayou. His father left it alone his whole life. Gerard started going there. She said, he went every day. For 11 years, every day, he walked to the northwest corner. He always went alone. He always came back before dark. He never said what he did there. We knew not to ask. Celestine said, I am a woman who has prayed her whole life. I know what devotion looks like. I know what it looks like when a person gives themselves to something larger than themselves. I have seen it in the church. I have seen it in the fields. I have seen it in the faces of people who love something enough to give everything they have to it. What Gerard Voclan was doing in that northwest corner had the quality of devotion, the daily going, the returning, the years of it. But it was not devotion to anything I recognized. It was devotion to something that did not have a name in any language I had been given. She said, on the night of the fire, I woke because something woke me. Not a sound, not a smell, a feeling, like a hand on my shoulder, pushing me toward the door. I did not question it. I got my children, and I went to the door and I left. When I looked back at the main house from the far edge of the property, the parlor window was lit up, and I could see him in his chair. And I understood, in the way you understand certain things without words, that he had finally arrived where he had been going for 11 years. Joseph Arsenault's statement was shorter than his mother's. He was 31 years old and had been on the plantation since birth, and he described himself to the clerk as a person who notices things without asking about them, which is the survival strategy of a person who has learned that asking questions about certain things produces worse outcomes than not knowing the answers. He said, Mr. Voclan started coming back from the northwest corner different, starting around 1885 or so. Before that, he came back the same. Tired, maybe. Like a man who has worked hard, but the same man who left. Starting in 1885, he came back lighter. Not in his body. Lighter in the way he held himself. Like something had been decided that he had been unsure about for a long time. He said, by 1887, he was different every day. Whatever was happening in the northwest corner was happening more completely. He stopped eating most of his meals. He lost weight, but he didn't seem sick. He seemed, I don't have the right word. He seemed like he was becoming less of himself and more of something else. Like he was being prepared for something. Joseph Arsenault said, on the night of the fire, I woke up an hour before it started. I knew to leave. I don't know how I knew. I just opened my eyes and knew. When I ran past the main house, I looked through the parlor window and saw Mr. Voclan in his chair. He looked directly at me. He looked at me, the way you look at someone you are saying goodbye to. And then he looked back at the fire. He looked back at the fire as though it was the most important thing he had ever seen. Solomon Thoreau had been the plantation's groundskeeper since 1871, 17 years before the fire. And his statement is the longest of the three and the most specific about the northwest corner of the property. He said, I went to the northwest corner once, in 1880, before Mr. Voclan told me not to. I went because there was a fence line that needed checking along the bayou edge, and the northwest corner was the logical place to start. I walked in through the cypress trees, and I got about 100 feet in and I stopped. The clerk asked why he stopped. He said, because the ground was wrong. Not soft, not waterlogged. The ground in the northwest corner is always a little waterlogged. That's why nothing grows. This was different. The ground felt like it was listening. I don't know how else to say it. I put my foot down and the ground felt like it was paying attention to my foot, like it knew I was there. He said, there was also the temperature. The northwest corner was warm. Not warm like a sunny clearing. The cypress trees kept the sun out, and it should have been cooler than the surrounding land. It was warmer. Significantly warmer. Body temperature, maybe. The warmth of something living. He said, I turned around and walked back. I did not check the fence line. I told Mr. Voclan what I had found because I thought he should know that there was something unusual in the northwest corner of his property. He listened to me very carefully. He asked me exactly where I had stopped, how far in. He asked whether I had heard anything. I said no. He nodded. He said, after that conversation, Mr. Voclan told me that the northwest corner was private and that I should not go there again. He said it quietly, without anger. He said it the way you say something when there is nothing else to say about it. I never went back. Solomon Tarode said, "In the years after that, when Mr. Vauclain came back from the northwest corner, I sometimes smelled something on him. Not smoke, not bayou water, not anything I could identify. A smell like the air before a thunderstorm, except underground. Like lightning that hasn't happened yet, coming from below the soil." He said, "I watched him change over 11 years. The change was slow enough that you didn't see it day to day. But if you compared the man who came back from the northwest corner in 1878 to the man who came back from it in 1887, they were not the same person. The 1878 man had weight to him. The weight that a person has when they are fully present in their own body, when their life and their attention and their concerns are all located in the same place. By 1887, the weight was going, not because he was sick, because he was increasingly located somewhere else. His body was still here. Whatever had made him himself was somewhere in the northwest corner. He said, "I have thought about whether this should frighten me, and I have decided that it does not, because I believe Mr. Voclan chose this. I believe he walked into that corner in 1877 and found something there and made a decision about it, and kept making that decision every day for 11 years. And on the night of September 3rd, 1888, he made it for the last time. Whatever he was giving to the northwest corner, he gave all of it on that night. And the fire was how the giving was completed." Solomon Tarode said, "On the night of the fire, I woke up an hour before it started. I knew to leave. I don't know how I knew. I just opened my eyes and knew. When I ran past the main house, I looked through the parlor window and saw Mr. Voclan in his chair. He looked directly at me. He looked at me the way you look at someone you were saying goodbye to. And then he looked back at the fire. He looked back at the fire as though it was the most important thing he had ever seen." Tarode paused. The clerk noted this with the word "pause" in parentheses, and then said, "When he thanked me, I understood that he was saying goodbye. I understood that he was not coming back. I did not know about the fire yet. But I understood that whatever had been happening in the northwest corner for 11 years had finished happening, and that the result of it finishing was that Gerard Vauclain was done." He said one more thing, added after the formal questioning was complete. A thing said at the door, on the way out, that the clerk felt compelled to write down. Solomon Tarode said, "I don't know what was in the northwest corner. I never went back to find out. But the thing I keep coming back to is this. The ground that Mr. Voclan walked to every day for 11 years did not feel evil. It did not feel good. It felt very, very old. Older than the bayou, older than the cypress trees, older than Louisiana. Like something had been there before everything else was there, and was still there, and was patient about it." These are the 3 statements that were placed in an envelope marked "Not Included" in final report, and put in a box in the St. Mary Parish Courthouse in 1888. The fire marshal's official report, the 2-page document that was filed without the statements, lists the cause of the fire as undetermined, the structure as a total loss, and the fatality as one. The owner, Gerard Vauclain, age 47. The investigation lasted 2 days. The report notes that all other persons on the property escaped without injury, and that the fire appeared to have started in multiple locations simultaneously, which the marshal described in language that suggests professional discomfort, with his own conclusion as consistent with the spread of a fire from a single point of origin under conditions of high wind. Except that the night of September 3rd, 1888 was, by the weather records of the U.S. Signal Corps for St. Mary Parish, a calm night with no significant wind. Multiple points of origin. No wind. One man who did not move. I contacted the Louisiana State Archives in Baton Rouge. The Signal Corps weather records for St. Mary Parish in 1888 are real and are held there. The night of September 3rd is recorded as calm. Temperature 81 degrees, no precipitation, wind speed negligible. The fire marshal's explanation does not hold under the weather record. The fire marshal himself, a man named Thomas Hebert, age 54, who had served St. Mary Parish for 19 years, retired from his position 6 weeks after filing the report. The retirement is recorded in the parish employment records. There is no stated reason. Hebert had given no indication of planning to retire before the Vauclain fire. He was 54 years old and in good health. He retired 6 weeks after the investigation and did not speak publicly about the case in any surviving document. He did write one letter. It was to his brother in New Iberia, written in October of 1888, approximately a month after the fire. The letter is in the collection of the New Iberia Public Library, donated by the Hebert family estate in 1961. I read it on a Thursday morning. He wrote, "I closed the Voclan case last week, and I have been trying to decide how to write to you about it since then. I will tell you only what I can tell you, which is not everything. The fire started in several places at once. There was no accelerant that I could identify. There was no wind. The man inside did not try to leave. The workers who escaped did so before the fire reached the quarters, before it was possible for them to have seen it or smelled it. They left because something told them to leave. Whether that something was Vauclain himself, or the land, or God, or something I have no word for, I cannot say. I am not going back to that property. I am not going to describe in an official document what the workers told me about the northwest corner, because I am not prepared to have that description exist on paper with my name on it. I have removed those statements from the file. I am retiring. I want to think about something other than the Vauclan property for the rest of my life. He lived until 1907. As far as I can determine, he got his wish." There is no further mention of the Vauclan case in any surviving document connected to Thomas Hebert. The Vauclan plantation site was sold in 1889 to a neighboring landowner who incorporated it into a larger operation. The main house site was cleared. The sugar house ruins were demolished. The quarters where the workers had lived were repurposed. The new owner, a man named Gerard Vauclain, farmed the land for 12 years without incident and died in 1901, leaving the property to his sons. The Vauclain sons, in their division of the inherited property, did something that I noticed in the deed records at the courthouse. They did not include the northwest corner in the division. The parcel was separated from the main property in 1902 and listed in the records as undevelopable wetland. The sons did not sell it. They simply detached it from the rest of the property and let it sit, unlisted, untaxed for several years, until a clerk at the parish assessor's office noticed the anomaly and required them to either incorporate it back into the property assessment or sell it. They sold it to the Diocese of Lafayette in 1891, which means that the Fontenot sons owned the northwest corner parcel for 9 years, from 1889 to 1891, before selling it. 9 years during which they detached it from the rest of the property, did not farm it, did not develop it, and did not explain in any surviving document why they were treating it differently from the rest of the 800 acres. I cannot determine whether the Fontenot sons knew what had happened in the northwest corner during the Vauclan years. I cannot determine whether Solomon Toureau, or Celestine Arsenault, or Joseph Arsenault remained on the property under the Fontenot management, and whether they communicated anything to the new owners. The worker statements were sealed in 1888 and not opened until I opened them. Whatever those three people knew about the northwest corner was not in the official record. Whether it was in the informal record, in conversations, in warnings passed from person to person, in the particular knowledge that communities develop about places that should not be approached, I cannot say. What I can say is that the Fontenot sons separated the northwest corner from everything else they inherited, and then sold it to a church that tried to build on it and couldn't. And then the church sold it back into private hands, and the private hands that received it have not held it for long. The northwest corner of the Vauclain Plantation has had 11 owners since 1894. I verified this in the deed records. 11 owners in 130 years, an average of less than 12 years per owner. Some owners held it for less than 2 years. The longest tenure was 19 years, by a family named Broussard, who listed the parcel as part of a larger wetland tract and may not have known they owned it specifically. No owner has built on it. No owner has surveyed it in the past 40 years. No owner has, in any document I could locate, explained why they sold it. The Diocese of Lafayette has no record of why the church was never built on the parcel they owned from 1891 to 1894. The archivist at the diocese told me, when I called, that construction projects from that era were often abandoned for practical reasons: cost, access, the availability of building materials, and that there would not necessarily be a documented explanation. She said this helpfully and without any apparent awareness of what she was describing. A church that a diocese purchased land for and then never built, and sold the land back into private hands 3 years later without explanation. I asked if there were any records from that period related to the parcel. She said she would check. She called me back 2 weeks later and said she had found a single document, a letter from the pastor of the proposed church to the bishop of the diocese, dated March of 1892, recommending that construction be abandoned. The letter gave one reason. The pastor wrote, "I have visited the site 3 times in the past 6 months. On each visit, I have found the ground in the northwest portion of the parcel to be unusually warm, and on the 3rd visit, I found that the warmth is accompanied by a sound, very low, below what one would normally call hearing, that I believe to be coming from beneath the surface of the soil. I have prayed about this extensively. I believe this ground is occupied. I do not believe it should be built upon. I believe this ground is occupied." The pastor's name was Father Alphonse Muton. He served the St. Mary Parish area from 1887 to 1904. He is buried in the churchyard of St. Peter's in Franklin. The diocese archivist confirmed this when I asked. I asked whether Father Muton had ever written about the Vauclain site again, in sermons, in letters, in any other document. She checked. He had. Once. In a letter to a fellow priest in 1898, 6 years after his recommendation to abandon the construction project, Father Muton wrote, "I think often about the parcel in St. Mary Parish that I visited in 1892. I have never described to anyone what I heard on the 3rd visit, because describing it would require me to say something that I am not willing to say in writing. What I will say is this. What I heard was not random. What I heard was not the sound of water moving underground or of gas escaping from the soil. What I heard had the quality of attention. It was aware that I was there, and it communicated this awareness in the only way available to something that does not have words. I will not visit that parcel again. I pray for whoever owns it now. I pray for whoever has owned it before, and I pray for Gerard Voclan, whose relationship with that ground I did not understand when I first heard of it, and understand somewhat better now, and wish I did not understand at all. Father Muton died in 1904. The letter to his fellow priest was found in the parish records of St. Peter's in Franklin, where it had been misfiled under a general correspondence folder from the 1890s. The diocese archivist had not known it existed until she searched for it at my request. 2 documents from 2 different people describing the same thing in the northwest corner of the Voclan property, written 4 years apart. Solomon Thoreau's statement from 1888, "The ground felt like it was listening," and Father Muton's letter from 1892, "It was aware that I was there." 3 accounts total, covering 12 years, all describing the same quality in the same 3 acres of Louisiana wetland. The accounts end in 1898 with Father Muton's letter. Whether anyone else has been to the northwest corner since, and whether anyone else has felt the ground's attention, and whether the warmth Solomon Thoreau described in 1880 is still there, and whether what Gerard Vauclain spent 11 years cultivating is still there, in whatever form it takes now, 135 years after he sat in his chair and watched the fire come, with the expression of a man who has been expecting something and is relieved it has arrived. I do not know. I don't have an answer. I've looked. There isn't one. What I have is the envelope, the 3 pages inside it, the account books with their unexplained entries, the letters from the Louisiana Historical Association, the pastor's recommendation to the bishop, the priest's letter to his colleague, misfiled for 100 years, and the deed records showing 11 owners in 130 years, none of them staying long, none of them building, none of them explaining why they left. The ground in the northwest corner of the Voclan Plantation is 3 acres of Louisiana wetland that nobody has built on in 135 years. Gerard Voclan walked there every day for 11 years and came back lighter each time. Solomon Thoreau put his foot down once and felt it paying attention. Father Muton visited 3 times and heard something that he spent the rest of his life not wanting to describe. The fire came on the night of September 3rd, 1888, and Gerard Voclan sat in his chair and did not move. Perhaps the fire was what he had been preparing for. Perhaps the fire was the door. And perhaps whatever came through that door is still in those 3 acres, in the cypress and tupelo, below the current water table, in the warm ground that nobody will own for long, and nobody will build on, and nobody, as far as the available record shows, has been willing to enter, since a priest prayed over it in 1892 and decided that whatever was in there should be left alone. The ground is listening. It has always been listening. It was listening when Solomon Thoreau put his foot down and felt it paying attention. And it is listening now.
Thank you for reaching the end of this story with me. Tell me in the comments what you'll do right after this video. Close YouTube, reread someone's old messages, call someone. I'm genuinely curious. And subscribe to Behind the Photo. The next photograph is already waiting for its moment.